Okay, so now I want to increase the level in the fuel fuel chamber, and I'm going to do the reverse as before. This time I'm going to actually bend this lever tab. I'm going to bend it up away from the needle and seat so that the needle and seat closes later. Okay, it's moved. Now, same as before, I'm going to put the float bowl on, hold it with my hand this time. Oops, I'm going to fill the carburetor while it's level. Okay, I can actually hear the air burbling out of the vent, and that should be enough. Now, I'm just going to remove the bowl and check my fluid level. And my fluid level, my fuel level in the bowl is still a little bit too low, so I'm going to try again. I'm going to lift this tab here a little higher. Okay, now I'll try again. Holding the carburetor level, squeeze some petrol in, listen for the air venting out of the brass nipple there to stop. Okay, now I can check again. Now that's better. Now my fluid level is up about a little bit over halfway. I'm just going to make a little mark here on the level. And I'm going to try and get it a little bit higher. Just a little bit higher. The problem with having the bowl level too low is the mixture actually leans off. And if you go too far, you can actually starve the engine of fuel. So again, we're lifting this tab away from the needle and seat to increase the float level. That should do it. Maybe I've gone too far, let's see. So again, hold the carburetor level, push some fluid in. Okay, that's it, it's full now. Well, the needle and seat is working. And I'll remove this. See what I've got. And that's looking pretty good. As a rule of thumb, this seam line here should be level at about the time the fluid starts to flow. When it's level, it should be just closing. When it's low, so there you see the floats are level and it's just closed, just below level, and they're opening. And you can see when they're fully open, the fuel's pouring in. As the floats come up, it stops. Now I would be prepared to put that on an aircraft now and do some ground runs. It's very important that the ground runs are conducted after these changes, because the biggest concern that we've got is that if you've gone too far, you may have the engine idling okay, you may alleviate your flooding problem, but you may actually be running too lean, and on takeoff you don't want to get into a situation where you haven't got enough fuel because you've lowered the fuel level too far. So make sure after you've done your carburetor adjustments that you put the carburetor back on the engine, you tie the aircraft down, you put the chocks on, and you go to full power and hold full power for at least 5 minutes to simulate a proper takeoff. After you've done that for a while, you should be fairly comfortable in the knowing that that you're not running too lean and that you've got at least the correct sufficient amount of fuel for the engine to run at full power. Now when we put the float bowl back on, we must be very careful that this cork gasket has not lifted and come out of this groove and got caught halfway. If you damage this gasket, you may not have a Bing distributor in your local neighbourhood. You may have to get it in, take several days. So make sure that you protect this gasket. Always put this cork gasket here. Always make sure that this cork gasket is in that groove. Never try and place the cork gasket on the edge of this bowl and then try and find it. You will cut the gasket every time. Make sure that the gasket is in, the cork seal is in that channel before you put the bowl on. If you're working upside down on the engine, put a little bit of grease or a little bit of, just grease or something to hold the gasket in the groove, and then put the bowl on. Make sure it's seated properly, and then put the clip on. It's quite tight. Make sure it's all the way on. Now it's very important that once you put the bowl on, that you put your fuel pumps on or have an observer check that it's not leaking. It's quite common for you to put the bowl back on, and if you put it on incorrectly, it'll be pouring fuel out. So don't run the engine or go flying before you've checked that your carburetor is not leaking.